Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you're absolutely in love with the New York Knicks like I am, I recommend clicking that red subscribe button down below and lighting up that post notification bell so you do not miss any future content on this channel. So a few days have passed now when it comes to the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, as the New York Knicks moved away Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a protected Detroit Pistons draft pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves to get Karl-Anthony Towns, who was playing the 4 for the Minnesota Timberwolves because, of course, Rudy Gobert did play that 5, as we're trading for Karl-Anthony Towns at a very interesting part of his career, that he was obviously the first overall pick in 2015. If you guys remember that draft, he was the first overall pick. D'Angelo Russell went second. You had Jalu Okafor that went 3. Kristaps Porzingis, Devin Booker went in that draft. Justice Winslow, Emmanuel Mudiay. That definitely is a huge throwback. And during that time, Karl-Anthony Towns was painted as the savior. He's the next generational big man, and he's definitely been amazing, but there's been some questions in his career. When Jimmy Butler went over to Minnesota, people were starting to question Karl-Anthony Towns. Where's that dog in Karl-Anthony Towns? You see these reports that come out like Tom Thibodeau, Karl-Anthony Towns, or just like overall Minnesota Timberwolves team is pretty soft. Jimmy Butler is saying, remember the famous practice when he went on to beat the starters with the bench players, and Jimmy Butler showed that alpha dog. He proved that he was the best player on that team. And Karl-Anthony Towns didn't show as the number one option that he can carry a team consistently to the playoffs yet, or that be his main thing. A few years later, Anthony Edwards arrives, obviously, being in that 2020 draft, and he goes on to be amazing. He has the talent, but he has the dog and the mental toughness on top of it. So Karl-Anthony Towns, we acquired as one of the best players in the game, as an insane, versatile skill set, especially for someone that is a 7-footer. He can do a lot out there on the floor that we're going to be getting into. We're going to be talking about him in this video. How does he fit with this New York Knicks roster, and what are we getting with Karl-Anthony Towns? But this was definitely one of the most impressive seasons in my opinion, because Karl-Anthony Towns, what he has proved though, is he's not a locker room problem. He doesn't have the ego of like, no, F that, I want to be the number one option, I want to be the one taking all the shots. No, he sacrificed a lot and kind of changed his play style a little bit, even though he's still getting buckets, deferring away from the ball a little bit and not having the offense fully run through a Karl-Anthony Towns. He's always been a good passer, but I feel like he became smarter passing the basketball. He became a little more engaged defensively, and you got to respect that about Karl-Anthony Towns, that he's always had a good attitude. You know, we could talk about losing Julius Randle, we could talk about losing Donte DiVincenzo, a big time depth piece that I mentioned in my previous video, but at the end of the day, Karl-Anthony Towns is a New York Knick. We got to talk about it and we got to support him. He's from Jersey. Unfortunately, he is an Eagles fan, but he grew up a New York Knicks fan. There's some old tweets of him tweeting about like Linsanity, so that's really cool. So you look at the projected lineup for this New York Knicks roster. Projectedly, it's going to be Jalen Brunson, it's going to be Mikal Bridges, or some people might put Josh Hart at the 2. He's not a consistent floor spacer, and even though he's only 6'4", we know he's amazing on the glass, so some people might have him at the 4. But a lot of people might be saying Jalen Brunson at the 1. You have Josh Hart at the 2. Mikal Bridges, OG, who's a versatile defender, maybe he's capable of playing that 4 position. And then you're going to have Karl-Anthony Towns, or some people are going to swap out, put Mikal Bridges at that 2, OG Anunoby at that 3, and Josh Hart at that 4. Some people are going to put Josh Hart at the 2, like I was saying. So it's going to be very fascinating what we go on to do with the lineup, and what happens with the lineup when Mitchell Robinson comes back healthy. Are you going to do what the Minnesota Timberwolves did of having 2 7-footers? You know, Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4, Rudy Gobert at the 5, and this time it's Mitchell Robinson at the 5. So if you take a look at Karl-Anthony Towns this past season, he played 62 games, which is a huge upgrade compared to the prior season that he played under 30 games of basketball due to a serious calf strain. But this dude's still an unbelievable basketball player. We can question dog, but sometimes players have that dog in them and they still don't produce. And it's not like people say he doesn't have the dog and he doesn't show effort. He does show effort out there on the floor, but from a mental standpoint, I know what some people are talking about in playoff games. It seems like if he'll have a bad turnover, if he gets into foul trouble, which is one of the low IQ things about Karl-Anthony Towns, sometimes he does get into his head. But hopping right into his skill set, hopping right into what he did last season, he averaged 21 points per game. He averaged 8 rebounds. He's damn near a 50-40-90 guy. Shot over 50% from the field, over 40% from 3, and 87% from the free throw line. And before Rudy Gobert did get there, he was consistently putting up 20 and 10. He was averaging more rebounds. So this is someone that really goes after goes after the ball and goes and commits, and I thought it was his best defensive season. There could be some inconsistencies with him when it comes to navigating around the pick and roll and defending the pick and roll. That could be a frustrating part of him, but when it comes to help side defense, I thought he got better. When it came to transition defense, I really felt like he got better when that came to as part of his game. Like, he has a good attitude. He wants to win. I really do believe that when I watch Karl-Anthony Towns play, but you're getting a straight up shooter. Like, you take a look at the history lately of the New York Knicks having floor spacing bigs. We haven't had really a consistent one since Porzingis. Porzingis being this guy, I know he did play the 4 a lot for the New York Knicks, and Enes Kanter at the 5, but just due to his height, his ability to floor space, shoot from mid-range. I know Knicks fans hate that name now, but shoot it from 3. Like, he was a true floor spacing big, and I feel like we've kind of missed that. And Karl-Anthony Towns is a good fit, adding more versatility to our offense. And I'm going to talk about how that's going to affect defenses. And there's so many times that it's frustrated us playing against floor spacing bigs because of what they're able to do and affect our defense, and just having this many versatile shooters. And as Kanter, I wouldn't call him a floor spacing big. He would occasionally shoot a mid-range, but Andre Bargnani, if you want to go back to those dark days, some lineups you play the 5, sometimes you play the 4, but since the Raptors days, like, that was the big part of him being that #1 overall pick, his ability to floor space. But not a lot of Knicks fans want me to bring up that name either. But Karl-Anthony Towns is one of the most skilled centers in the league, no doubt about it. Dribble handoffs, pick and pop situations, this is one of my favorite fits. There's so many times this has frustrated me when the Knicks are taking on the Celtics or taking on the Pacers. You know, you have Porzingis, who's this tall 7-footer, 7'3" that could space the floor, Miles Turner that could space the floor, and it really hurt us in the playoffs. When you have someone that's able to pick and pop and they could finish in the inside, it's so easy to manipulate defenses, especially if you have a smart point guard. And we have a smart point guard of Jalen Brunson that's really good at reading the second man of the defender when it comes to near the basket, or the guy that's trying to navigate around the screen. That we'll see this a lot. If it was Drew Holiday handling the ball, Tyrese Halliburton, such smart basketball players that when a screen is set, it looks like Miles Turner's gonna like cut to the basket and then have an easy opportunity, and they're going to throw it ahead to him. Tyrese Halliburton's going to throw it to a Miles Turner inside. But no, because Miles Turner, he's very mobile on his feet. Last second, great cut, gets the defender to bite inside, and then pops outside of the perimeter, open 3 opportunity. And it's not just having that versatility of floor spacing and having to pay attention to like so many guys when you're able to space the floor, but another part of it is that when you're a center and when your center that's able to space the floor and your center is like chasing after you, because if you pop outside of the perimeter or you have that ability to shoot the 3, it draws the center outside on the perimeter. And then if that shot goes up, and because he's still closing out, trying to have that hard contest on him, when that ball goes up, you never know how that ball's going to bounce, and there might be a mismatch opportunity in the paint because the center is not going to be in the paint anymore. So a guard might be able to get a rebound, or maybe a power forward. But Karl-Anthony Towns is someone that can play without the ball. You know, he's really good at relocating, getting to his spot, moving out there on the floor. He's one of the most mobile centers, no doubt about it. He's athletic, he can catch lobs and throw it down. And there's so many times that I feel like we relied so much on ISO ball last year. If it was Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle, and it looked like they were just worn out at the end of games. But when you have so many floor spacers and you have so many looks to just create for others, and there's less fatigue out there when you're creating for others, because it's less isolation, one-on-one basketball of you tying yourselves out, so you're going to be better at the end of games, and in my opinion. And Karl-Anthony Towns is actually going to give us more energy in basketball games. Having another guy that could create and score the basketball, it takes less off of a plate of a Jalen Brunson or Mikal Bridges that's able to create, you know, OG Anunoby that's good at moving without the basketball, because he gets those buckets off ball, OG Anunoby, but it takes up a lot of energy. But when you have an extra guy that could score the basketball and not have to ISO ball like crazy, like Karl-Anthony Towns is capable of ISOing, putting his shoulder into someone, using a rip-through move, working down the lane to go to a hook shot or go to a floater or out of the low post. He's a great passer of the basketball, and he recognizes guys cutting or he's posting up. He has that follow-away jumper. He definitely does have a versatile offensive skill set. He can catch lobs, but when you have an extra scorer out there on the floor, it's less ISO ball, and you're going to be less tired because there's other guys that can go ahead and get you a bucket in late game situations, or just in general, when if Jalen Brunson's had consecutive straight buckets and maybe he's looking a little fatigued, he could look to someone else in those moments. So I definitely love that about Karl-Anthony Towns. He's able to create. I love when he uses the rip-through move. When he's not in his head, I feel like he is dominant in the post, but it really comes down to not picking up fouls, or when you do pick up fouls, like he needs to have better short-term memory and not let it get to him, because I know some people have seen those clips of him not being effective sometimes against mismatches when trying to back guys down, and sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I feel like he gives up a little too much in the post and then he settles for a fadeaway jumper that I'm not a big time fan of, but he is an excellent shooter of the basketball that he could definitely get away with that. And also having a center that could shoot the basketball, or a big man that can shoot the basketball, it actually draws a lot more defenders outside on the perimeter, and it gives us more open driving lanes because, like, think about it. You're going to have to collapse on an OG Anunoby. You're going to have to collapse on a Mikal Bridges, a Jalen Brunson. You're going to have to collapse on a lot of players out there on the floor. Karl-Anthony Towns, so it opens up driving lanes. Josh Hart likes to attack the basket. Brunson likes to attack the basket. OG Anunoby's really good at moving without the basketball. And when Karl-Anthony Towns is at the top of the key, he's good at recognizing mismatches and making those entry passes. If there's a guard on OG Anunoby, Karl-Anthony Towns really knows how to make those reads. Out of the low post, he puts really good touch on them, and I feel like he's an underrated passer in transition. He had a season that he averaged 4.8 assists per game. He's a 3 assist point per game guy, or 3 assists per game guy for his career. I feel like that's one of the most underrated parts of his career, his ability to manipulate defense with his eyes, find someone cutting back door, and seeing things before they happen. I'm not saying he's Jokic level, but that's very effective. Because when you see one person moving the basketball, it just becomes constantly contagious and makes your offense very unselfish, and you rely on the pass and you don't rely on a lot of iso ball, because when you're continuously moving around the basketball and letting people have the feel of the ball to get into a rhythm, it's going to help you down the stretch of games, and you're not in a situation like, well, that guy only took 2 shots. No, you're equally distributing the ball, so everyone's going to be in rhythm. That also helps having another passer in the offense. So when it comes to his skill set, I feel like he fits this team, giving us more versatility, giving us another creator, but he doesn't need to create to be successful in the offense. He's a very good athlete. He's really good at running the floor. He has very good hands. That was one of the main things I loved about him coming out of Kentucky, that he has soft hands in the post, doesn't rush, has excellent touch, and we've seen him use that excellent touch, again, if it's from mid-range, if it's from the outside, using a floater, using a hook shot, and he's someone that's capable of getting to the free throw line. But like, his skill set fits this team, like, no doubt about it. Today's NBA, getting the defense to collapse is going to open up so much for other guys, and Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be able to make those pocket passes in the corner to an OG Anunoby, because he's such a threat of an offensive player. He's going to draw another defender over, and then you have Brunson, who's your #1 scorer, but you also have to pay attention to Karl-Anthony Towns. Brunson's going to get open looks. So many people are going to have open looks in the offense, and it's going to become more of an unpredictable offense. Like I like Mitchell Robinson, but we know he's a lob threat. He can't space the floor, but you're going to have to respect Karl-Anthony Towns, and you're going to have to respect this offense from all over on the floor. Josh Hart, when he's on from 3. His games that he's definitely off, but I feel like he's respectable enough that you have to collapse the perimeter. So I really believe there's some like very versatile offensive pieces, defensive pieces in the starting lineup, but from a mentality standpoint, that's really where he's gonna have to prove it. I know he grew up a Knicks fan. I know he's from Jersey, but like, you still need to step on that Garden floor. And he did help the Minnesota Timberwolves go to the Western Conference Finals. He had some issues with foul trouble, committing stupid fouls, so sometimes his IQ is not the greatest. Sometimes you want to see him take it to the basket a little more personally, but he is such a threat from mid-range. He is such an efficient shooter of the basketball. He still shot 36% from 3 this past playoffs. He still shot over 45% from the floor, but you still probably want something a little more when it comes to a 7-footer. But he still was a 19-8 guy. But defending the pick and roll, sometimes from a physicality standpoint, you worry about him. Is his head always in the game? He needs to learn how to have more short-term memory, and we're going to see how that is under Tibbs a second time around. But I just thought he brought more intensity on the defense side of the basketball. I feel like he just decided better, like he was better at using his tools last year. He's always had the wingspan, he's always had the strength, but it comes down to being consistently engaged defensively. He's times that he's a very good perimeter defender. There's times that he looks a little lost navigating the pick and roll. There's times like he just has excellent feel as a basketball player, and sometimes you want to see that more on the defensive end. Like when he's in the post, he has excellent feel. Like he'll fake in one direction, like a little dream shake. I'm not saying he's perfected like the dream shake, but you'll see him like go in one direction, gets the defense to bite, and he has such great feel that he feels the defender going in one direction, and then he turns over his shoulder for a hook shot, turns over his shoulder for a mid-range jumper. So we're getting a very talented player here on Karl-Anthony Towns. Talking about the individual player, we're going to have to see defensively, but he could pass. He could score from all 3 levels. He's a great athlete. He can run the floor. He's very unselfish and is going to bring a lot of versatility, which I love, to the New York Knicks. But it comes down to, does he have the mental toughness in New York? How is he going to be in the playoffs? The chemistry, it's probably going to take some time for the chemistry, no doubt about it, but how is he going to overcome adversity? It's going to be very interesting. No doubt he's shown that he could overcome adversity off the court, but on the court, how is he going to be? He's been through regimes with the Timberwolves, like tons of coaches. I feel like he's been through a few coaches, GMs, like they weren't a very well functioning organization, which happens when you are the #1 overall pick. You don't go to a very functioning organization. When help is set, he makes the right read, but sometimes he had bad turnovers as well in the playoffs. I think it really comes down to the big moments, because we know this team's going to be good in the regular season, but right now all that matters is playoffs. Multiple-time All-Star, but do you perform like a multiple-time All-Star in the playoffs? He was a little up and down, but he definitely had games that he popped off, and he had a big-time matchup against, I remember, Nikola Jokic, like when they took on the Nuggets in the playoffs, and he performed well in that series. But again, just up and down. Sometimes there's some inconsistencies, but no doubt about it, when his head is locked in, he's an excellent player, and we're going to need him to consistently be locked in. Let me know down below your thoughts. Peace out, y'all.